Yeah, we're live. Hi, guys.
And I stood upon the sand of the sea and saw a beast rise up, rise up, rise up. He was able to make war with him.
Hey, Diane. Good to see you.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome once again to the Midnight Ride. It is my great honor to welcome each and every one of you into the Puritan Barn for the Midnight Ride with myself and John Pounders. Tonight, you've been hearing a lot about the Golden Age. Well, tonight, we're going to be unveiling to you the most ancient version of the Golden Age narrative, going back unto the halls of remote antiquity. And the best thing, the broadcast isn't remote because it's happening right now, because we are now
Live.
What's up, guys? It's so good to be here once again on Saturday night with you guys. And listen, I'm excited about this show for one main reason. I'm always excited when David's presenting for the night.
Hey, Di, we haven't seen much of Arsenal last week. He popped in for about 10 minutes, and that's about it. I hope he's okay.
But when it's a subject that I know things surrounding all of this, and even maybe people surrounding all of this, but I don't know a lot about this particular subject that David's delving into. I don't know that there's very many people that have talked about it. So with you guys, I'm going to be very much so listening. And if you guys come up with any clever questions for me to ask David in the chat, I might do so as well. But I'm not going to interrupt him too much tonight because I'm very excited. But thank you guys so much for being here. I'm going to ask that if you're not going to stay to the end till we do the Pounders Pound, to go ahead and pound that like button right now. And if you'd like to support us anyway, there's links in the description. You can also go check out David's YouTube channel, David and Donna Carrico, and also Brian Reese over at Underground Church YouTube channel, FOJC. So, David, tell them what you guys got in store for people tomorrow night.
Well, tomorrow night, Brian and I on Sunday Night Live, we're going to do a segue from this teaching tonight. It's called The Wounding of the 18, and we're going to be giving a big spiritual and prophetic and scriptural background to a lot of the things we're talking about tonight. So join us for that at 7 p.m. Central, Underground Church YouTube channel, FOJC. Thank you so much.
Very good, David. And I like I said, guys, I'm excited. So we're not going to waste any more of your precious time because I know.
Hey, Phil, good to see you, mate.
You could be out clubbing, which thank God you're not, right? I'm glad I'm not doing that. I was just thinking about that the other day. I'm like, what kind of people are these? I love meeting you guys out in public because most people, that's what they're wanting to do on Saturday night. But you guys are tuned in, wanting to learn. So we're going to take that ride into midnight. Here we go, David. Let's go.
Thank you very much, John. Well, tonight we're going to be tracing the neo-Nazi movement. And one author, he said, well, it shouldn't be called the neo-Nazi movement or the new Nazi movement because it was just pretty much run by the Nazis that were with Adolf Hitler in World War II. But we're going to be tracing this neo-Nazi movement post-World War II. We're going to be looking at its structure, but primarily tonight, we're going to be looking at the theology of this movement, the spirituality that this group adhered to. Now, I want to begin here. I want to read something here from a book by Jim Marrs. It's The Rise of the Fourth Reich. I know many of you are familiar with Mr. Marrs. On page 147, he writes this: "It is estimated that as many as 100,000 ranking Nazis remained at large after the war. As such, it constitutes one of the largest, best funded, best trained, best equipped, and best connected cults in the world." And that's really something for us to think about. I think we're all familiar and we've heard about the tremendous amount of money and gold that the Nazis made off with at the end of the war. They had millions and probably even billions of dollars. Like Mr. Marv said, the estimates of the people by the end of the 40s that had went into Argentina were well over 250,000 card-carrying Nazis that went into Argentina and into Chile, where they were able to operate with the protection of those governments. Now, we're going to read something here. So, you know, we have to think, and of course we know about Operation Paperclip, and not only there were about 1,000 high-trained scientists that came into the United States, and probably as many that went into Russia. And I think we're naive to think that those Nazi scientists that worked side by side after they were in Russia and the United States, that there was no collaboration. And to think that there was no collaboration between the leaders in South America and the American and Russian scientists, I think this is also naive. And this began to form what Joseph Farrell referred to as the Nazi Internationale. And I think this is probably a serious version of the deep state. And as we're going to find tonight, there are actually two versions of the deep state that we have to be aware of. Now, this is a book called Vril, Secrets of the Black Sun by David Hatcher Childress. And he introduces a fellow here to us that we're going to be talking about tonight and reading from his material. His name is Michael Serrano. And he writes here,
"Hey, Trace, good to see you."
Serrano claimed that the Aryans were extragalactic beings who founded Hyperborea in the far north and lived the heroic life of Bohatavistas, while the Jews were created by the Demiurge and were concerned only with coarse materialism. Serrano claimed that a new golden age can be attained if the Hyperboreans repurify their blood, supposedly in the light of the black sun, and restore their blood memory. Now, I want to make it perfectly clear here. What we're doing here is exposing this. John and I are in no way saying this is good or this is right. We oppose this, and we oppose anti-Semitism in all forms. But to really understand the dynamics of the struggles within the deep state, I think we don't really understand it unless we consider this material. Now, Michael Serrano or Miguel Serrano, and we have some pictures of him here. And he was in the 30s a diplomat in Chile, and he was connected with all of the world governments. He was also for a while the ambassador of Chile to Japan. He was a member of a secret society in Japan called the Order of the Dragon, which was basically the Japanese counterpart to the Thule Society in Germany. And they basically, their entire theology was based around Hyperborea. And it was the dream of Mr. Hitler to contact these Hyperboreans and interbreed the German people with them for the purification of the bloodline. And as we know, and here you see, this is Mr. Serrano at a Nazi rally. He was very openly, he was rabidly in love with Adolf Hitler. As we pursue in our study this evening, we're going to see that they worshiped Adolf Hitler in a satanic mass. They also contacted and channeled Adolf Hitler. They believed he was physically alive, and they also believed that he was their avatar. One of Mr. Serrano's books is Adolf Hitler, the Ultimate Avatar. So to these people, we've talked a lot about the ascended masters on the Midnight Ride. And to these people, Adolf Hitler was their ascended master, just like El Mora or El Moya or Saint Germain would be to Theosophy. And this is the oldest, this Nordic philosophy is the oldest expression of the Golden Age. Now, Miguel Serrano and this lady here were the two people. This is Savitri Devi and an Indian lady, and Mr. Serrano and Miss Devi, they were the architects of the spirituality of the neo-Nazi movement post-World War II. Now, I'm going to read here from a book called Hitler's Priestesses. This is by Nicholas Goodrich Clark. And it says here on page 5 about Miss Devi, it says, Savitri Devi became a heroine of the neo-Nazi scene. In emotionally laden prose, she transformed the negative attributes.
Okay. Hello, Chris. It didn't show up on my chat on the tablet, but that showed up on the laptop. Hello, Chris, or Chris Jones. So it's not on my tablet, but it's up on my laptop. That's weird.
Of Nazism into a religious cult of cosmic significance. The Third Reich was presented as a rehearsal for the Aryan paradise, and Adolf Hitler was celebrated as an avatar, a supernatural figure whose invention in the cycle of the ages was essential to the restoration of the Golden Age. They believed that the ancient Hyperboreans, that when they were upon the earth, that this was the golden age of mankind. And when the Hyperboreans had to retreat into the heart of the earth, this was like the dark ages of the human race. But they believe through the purification of the blood that they can restore the golden age to the earth. And for those of us that believe in scripture, we can readily see within this the Genesis 6 scenario, the sons of God and the giants of men, and also in a recent Midnight Ride on the Tall Whites, we touched upon the Hyperboreans, how it tied into the Tall White scenario. Now, this is one of Miguel Serrano's books, The Golden Thread, Esoteric Hitlerism. And I'll read here from page 24. It says, the climate in the inside is an equilibrium. He's speaking of the inside of the earth. The climate in the inside is in equilibrium, as was once that of the outer earth, before the deviation of the axis and the inversion of the poles. There, the solar golden age still exists. In the center of the inner earth, there is a sun, smaller than our sun on the outside. As gravity is less on the inside, the inhabitants are of gigantic stature and they live very long lives. Hitler, young again, still lives. He goes on to say that the first to write about the hollow earth in our times toward the end of the last century and the beginning of ours were American. Also to write was one of Darwin's grandfathers, Erasmus Darwin, in his unusual book, The Golden Age. And we're here tapping into the oldest version of the Golden Age, that it once existed upon the earth. And biblically, we would relate this to the time of the giants, the sons of the God and the daughters of men. And they believe that now this Golden Age still exists in the heart of the earth, and that through purification of the bloodline, they can bring this Golden Age to reality here upon the earth. And for Midnight Riders, we've studied this very same thing in connection with the European bloodlines and the Merovingians and all of the European dynasties. that they believe that they have to keep their blood pure to keep that spiritual power. And we've talked many times also, this goes all the way back to the starfire, where they believe that the starfire of the goddess was the most pure blood. So it's about blood, and it's in reality what we're talking about. We're talking about Nephilim blood. We're talking about the defilement of the evil ones. Now, I'm going to throw another book. I brought several new books. We'll just hold a second on that.
Hey, I
I'm
was
gonna
going to
read
say,
here from a book called The Religion of the Ancient Egyptians by George Steindorf. Now, it's pretty wild when we hear the ancient Hyperborean legend of the Golden Age, when they believe that there's an inner sun and life in the heart of the earth. Now, on the Midnight Ride, we've talked a lot of times about the hollow earth, and I'm going to read this from this book to show that not only did the Norse legends believe that, and basically what Miss Devi did, she wedded Hinduism with Norse mythology. And it is really amazing the way she weaved the two together. And this formed the basis of the spirituality of this post-World War II Nazi movement. Now, read here from The Religion of the Ancient Egyptians by Mr. Steindorf, another German fellow, and they believed the very same thing. And on here on page 126, it said, beneath the flat earth lies a second earth named Tawet, a land which, like Egypt, is traversed by a river. On both banks are long passages and deep caverns. These, the dwelling places of the dead. By day, this is a region of dreariness, desolation, and mourning. But by night, when the sun has descended in the west, behind the mythical mountain Manu, the light shines upon the dead, and then behold the splendor of Ra. Now, in the Nordic version of the Hyperboreans, we see the Mount Meru. And Miss Devi, she took the Hindu theology, met it with the Norse, and Mount Meru was the sacred mount to them, but the same thing. And this basic understanding of a hollow earth with inhabitants in the inside, this was believed by Norse mythology, by the Far Eastern mythology. You see it in the Egyptian and the Babylonian. They all had this understanding because what they were all talking about was this Genesis 6 scenario, which the Bible unfolds us to as the time when the giants roamed on the earth. Now, this book is entitled Arctos, the Polar Realm by Jocelyn Goodwin. And Miss Goodwin is not a Christian author. And the very first chapter of this book, chapter 1 here, is called The Golden Age. And it again deals with these concepts of the far north and the Golden Age, and how that in the oldest tradition of the Golden Age, this was the Hyperboreans. And
I'm going good. I was. My cousin and her old man's up here, so we're just chilling out. Good weekend.
I'll read here from page 71 from Miss Goodwin's book, and she is spot on here. She really connects it just where it should be connected. But she says these Hyperboreans commanded the power of Vril and possessed the third eye. They did not reproduce sexually, but through plasmic emanation from their own bodies, while through their veins coursed the light of the black sun. Then came the catastrophe, as Genesis 6:4 puts it. The sons of God came into the daughters of men, and they bore children to them. The Hyperboreans made the mistake of mingling their blood in intercourse with the demiurge's creatures, and in this sin of racial mixture, paradise was lost. And in the regaining of racial purity, they believe the Golden Age will return. It says here that the Hyperboreans were the ancient white race. We talked about this in connection with our Tall White broadcast. And she says the Thule Society, in this perspective, was a revival of the Hyperborean ideals via Germanic myth and the science of runes. And we have talked a lot about the Thule Society and about the occult connections with Adolf Hitler. And we talked about the Thule Society and how that there was a quite lovely young lady, Maria Orsic,
Yeah.
that was the channeler and the main medium in the Thule Society, and even specific plans for German military rocketry.
The problem is, I was never here, is them conspiracies usually turn out to be right. I done a stream yesterday of Alex Jones. I had to delete it because it was Alex Jones. But she gave a lot of good info about whistleblowers and that.
And some of their exotic weaponry was claimed to have come from channeled sessions with Maria Orsic. And
was
when
good,
things
wasn't it?
began to go south with the war in World War II, in 1945, Maria Orsic began to announce that she was going.
I never knew Alex Jones predicted 911. I knew that whistleblower did. What was his name? They killed him. Can't remember who that was. But I didn't know Alex Jones knew it beforehand.
To ride a Hanube to the planet Aldebaran. Well, sure enough, she disappeared and was never seen again. But my bets was her new mailing address would have been Antarctica, not the planet Aldebaran. But John, do you have any thoughts so far?
Well, I'm super intrigued by this subject, to say the least, because reading the book of Enoch, for instance, it talks about places inside the earth that sounds like what you're reading about right here. So it's intriguing to me. I would love to be able to know as much as I can about the subject. So for me, I'm just really enjoying the subject you're putting off. But I can say that there are so many high-level people that are enveloped in this. Lots of money has gone into this idea, and I can't just blow it off as nonsense. It sounds like a sci-fi novel, but what we're talking about here is basically what drove a lot of these people to do some of the things they did.
Yeah.
I read a bit of Tom Clancy when I was younger.
And we've, and I know our audience is aware of the power these people had in America and in Russia also, running NASA, running Bell Aeronautics. We could go on and on and on. The people that came over in paperclip, they weren't coming over to work as janitors. They were running. They were all in positions of authority. So we're talking about tremendous power and opportunity. And they always play the long game. They always play the long game. Now we're going to introduce a fellow that many of you are familiar with, and we have to bring this fella in right here. And
I was never here. I've read a lot of books in my time. I like historical novels the best.
Set the table because he figures big in the spirituality of the neo-Nazi
or a
movement
biography
after World War II. And this, like I say, it was shaped.
I read Wyatt Earp's biography, and it was absolutely brilliant. What a hard man he was.
By Miss Debbie and Miguel Serrano. Now, this is John D. And John D. was in the court of...
Okay, seeing as you asked, A Tale of Two Cities, Gone with the Wind, Wizard of Oz. There's not many, though.
Queen Elizabeth. And he was the first guy. He was the one that James Bond 007. He was the first 007, Mr. John D. He was an accomplished black magician. And there in the picture to the right, you see.
Also, Colleen McCulloch, she wrote Thornbirds, which they made a TV series of. She does a good series on Rome. Like there's about 9 books. Starts like 100 years before Caesar and finishes 100 years after. And it takes 8 books to do it. And she does some of the best writing I've ever seen. It's really good stuff.
Him and Edward.
I love a decent book. I just haven't got time to sit around reading them now.
Kelly summoning a spirit in the graveyard, and his ability, Edward Kelly and John D. They said the things they could go into the graveyard and do rituals, and they could scare everybody. I guarantee you. And he also developed what was called the Enochian calls, and the Enochian calls formed the basis. They play large in the
Enochian language,
and also in the ritual magic of the Golden Dawn. Now, also, the things that Mr. D did loom large in the spirituality of neo-Nazi movement of post-World War II. Now, we have here a slide here of the actual Black Mirror. This is in the British Museum, and you see here the actual Black Mirror and the case, and you see the occult symbol.
Wow, there's actually a Black Mirror. Wow.
On top of this case. Here we see there is the crystal ball that John Dee used, and in the British Museum there is the actual Black Mirror that he used and the case that it was in. Pretty astounding. And I want to read here, and well, let's go first. We want to make clear here, and we want to go to the scripture in Deuteronomy chapter 18 and verses 9 and 10. These practices are absolutely condemned by the word
Whose name was there? I lost track. Sorry.
of God. We want to make that plain to everybody. This isn't something that John and I would in any way advocate. We openly say that these are the workings of the evil one, and they're condemned in Scripture. In Deuteronomy 18, verse 9 and 10,
oh,
when thou art coming to the
what was her
land
name? Colleen McCulloch. She was pretty well known.
Lord thy God giveth thee.
She wrote a book, The Song of Troy, and it was all about Achilles and Troy and that. That was the first book I read of hers. It was absolutely a masterpiece. But my favourite book's got to be Tale of Two Cities. Who done that? Charles Dickens. It was a brilliant movie and book.
Thou shalt not learn to do after the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found among you anyone that maketh his son or daughter to pass through the fire, or that useth divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch. And this is exactly what Mr. D had. He had the tools of divination, using there the crystal ball and the black mirror. And the revelations of John Dee had a big impact upon Miguel Serrano. Now, we'll read here from the Golden Thread by Miguel Serrano. This is on page 34, and he says this: John Dee, an extraordinary alchemist and English mathematician during the 16th century, said that the earth was not round, but
Isn't that the same time as Nostradamus? He showed up around the 1600s, didn't he?
Centric at the polar caps. He said that according to mathematical calculations, the earth was not solid, but was a series of spheres superimposed, which made it.
Phil, I got a PlayStation 4. I got some great games on that, but I want to get a PlayStation 5, but it might be a bit too advanced for me because I'm only just keeping up with the PlayStation 4. So that's what inhibited me getting a PlayStation 5. I do computer games on the laptop. Rome, it's a good series, good war game.
It possible to communicate between the spheres. He tried to convince Queen Elizabeth of England to take over Greenland because this land gave access to a parallel universe. Full stop. Now, this is jaw-dropping. This is jaw-dropping to me. But this is the heart of the spirituality of what the neo-Nazi movement believed. They believed that Greenland was the place where the portal to the parallel universe existed. This is much like Nimrod in...
I was never here. Do you know the parable of the 100 monkeys? With 100 monkeys, one monkey was getting his food and washing it in the sea, and the other monkeys were just eating it away. Then one day, all the other monkeys started washing their food as well, and monkeys on other islands that didn't even have contact with these monkeys, they started washing their fruit in the sea as well. So at the same time, so same sort of thing you just said there.
Genesis 11 in our Bible, Nimrod built the Tower of Babel, and he built it at a specific place. Now he wasn't really a dumb guy, and he didn't really believe that he could build a tower so high that he could actually reach into the third heaven. But what he believed was there was a portal there. That's what he was trying to do. He was trying to access a portal. Now, based upon the writings and demonic revelations of John Dee, they believed that there was a doorway to the parallel universe in Greenland. Reading on here from Mr. Serrano.
Okay. I wonder if John Dee whistled up the winds for the Spanish Armada because he was around at that time. I wonder if he caused the winds.
He said John Dee received these revelations by concentrating on a black mirror, which we just showed you, that is still today in the British Museum. A black sphere that is located today in the British Museum. It is said that John Dee could communicate with extraterrestrials from Hyperborea, beings from inside the Earth and beings from Venus, the morning star. The angels, according to Dee, could pass from the present into the past or into the future. Now, this is just absolutely phenomenal to me.
So they can get into the future. Wow, I didn't know that.
And what Mr. Dee was doing, he was talking with devils, and he was talking with these ancient Nephilim spirits of the giants, who I absolutely do believe are still in the heart of the earth.
Yep.
Now, I want to read also here from page 60 of The Golden Thread by Mr. Serrano, and he says this, and this adds, this kind of gives us a big picture of what this movement believed about Greenland. And just like all the way back in the 1500s, in the reign of Queen Elizabeth, John Dee was all about, man, we got to take Greenland. Now, it says here on page 60 of Mr. Serrano's book, but what was done of the survivors of Hyperborea, of those who took refuge in Iceland and Groenlandia, Greenland, the green earth of another time? Did they perish? Did they return to the star of origin, to another constellation closest to the...
I don't know about that. I was never here. The Australians had a lot of trouble with the Japanese in World War II. We were the first ones that pushed Japan back. We were the first one to stop their war. They're marching forward. We made them retreat.
Black sun, a reflection of the green ray in their Vimana flyers that go faster than thought, driven by the cosmic music of the spheres. And literally...
Okay, that's interesting. I was never here, I've got to admit.
Greenland was believed to at one time been a literal green paradise where the Hyperboreans lived. And they believed that there were still Hyperboreans that were actually living in Greenland, where they were there and guarding this gateway to the parallel universe that could be accessed there. Anything to weigh in there, John? Or
well, that's, I mean, look at what's going on right now. There's something major going on with Greenland. So how can you not see that? I guess it's just, I know you see it, but this is crazy to me. I just never heard this before.
Yeah, it's in your face.
Yeah,
it's in your face. And this is, we'll give you the documented facts here, and you can make your own conclusions. But I mean, this stuff's in your face. Now, on page 59. Miguel Serrano wrote this. He said, according to the Chaldeans, Hyperborea could only be reached by a secret tunnel in the ice that arrived at the Euphrates. The glaciers melt rapidly at...
The Chaldeans, they're British, aren't they? I'm pretty sure they're the British.
After the 4th millennium, and an ocean of mud flood, an ocean of mud prevents all contact with Hyperborea, submerged in catastrophe. The islets of Iceland and Greenland survived, where some Hyperboreans take refuge. So the Chaldeans also, like I said, the Egyptians and the Babylonians, the Sumerians, they all believed also in a half people and entities were living in the heart of the earth. These are the entities that Mr. John D. claimed to be communicating with. And the Babylonians said that there was, after this great catastrophe, that there was an entrance to Hyperborea by the Euphrates River, and also that the islands there.
Gabe's gone down to visit a family for the weekend.
That Iceland and Greenland survived. Well, let's look at the scripture here. And you know the scripture in the book of Revelation, chapter 6 and verse 12. And I beheld when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake, and the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. And I think, John, I'm going.
How can the sun have an eclipse and the moon have an eclipse at the same time? That's supernatural just on its own.
Read. I wrote that down wrong. Can you believe I made a mistake?
I can't believe it.
I tell you what, I can't believe it either. But what I want to read here is Revelation chapter 16:12. I just missed it by one letter, folks. But in Revelation chapter 16 and verse 12, that was a great scripture, though, by the way. It says, and the sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates, and the water thereof was dried up, and the way of the kings of the east, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. And I saw three unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. Now, could we have a connection here with what the Bible says? And the ancient Babylonians believed that there at the Euphrates River, there was the ancient portal to Hyperborea.
Wow.
Now, John, I know you've talked a lot. We have here on the Midnight Ride about the drying up the Euphrates. Something going on right now, by the way. But could we have a connection here?
I think so. I think, when we looked at it a couple years ago, the water had already receded. But I looked at it again just about a month ago, and it's so much further down than it was even when we talked about it before. There's so many weird things surrounding all of that, tunnels that they found, tombs that they found now that it's going down. I mean, who knows what's actually going on when you got that mixed with the four unclean spirits that look like frogs going forth. Who knows what's going on now.
Yeah. Now we're going to look here at some photos of our most northern military base that the United States has in Greenland. It is called the Patufic Space Base. Now, this was named the Patufic Space Base in 2023. The name of it,
and there just happens to be a portal mentioned
before, and still what most people call it is the Thule Air Base, named after the Thule Society. And this is in the most northern part of Greenland, and this is considered of extreme military importance. And here you see some pictures of that base.
I was never here. Post the link now.
And on the next page here, or on the next page, on the next slide, we have here the seal of the, this is the six-headed Hydra seal of the Patufic Space Base. And this is the six-headed Hydra. And this rascal's kind of nasty looking, but this is the emblem of this base, the six-headed Hydra, which also harkens back to ancient times and this ancient mythology. And like I say here, what we're unpacking here, this is the oldest version of the Golden Age theology. It was embraced by the Thule Society there in the early part of the 20th century, but they were drawing it from these ancient texts that had for many, many millennia talked about the Golden Age in relation to Hyperborea and Thule. Now, We're going to go on to talk about, and well, yeah, here is another. This is a hoot right here. Now, this is the 2020 movie Greenland. And this was something with Gerard Butler. And in this movie, it's about comets, that a big comet that come in and breaks up, and it basically destroys all of the Earth. But they had a place where the elites could go and survive the comet blast. And guess where it was? It was in that's why they called it Greenland. The place where the elites went was in Greenland, right outside of this Thule military facility. It's quite a movie. And as always,
have to watch that.
in these things, there is a tremendous amount of predictive programming. Now, here we have a fellow that is familiar to most of you, Mr. Ant.
Oh, I only cough because I smoke pot. If I don't smoke pot, I don't cough.
Tom LaVey.
So it's not like I
dear
got
to his
pneumonia
right
or something.
is Susan Atkins, who is one of the Manson girls. Now,
look, there's Anton LaVey. On his deathbed, he said, "Oh my, what have I done? There's something dreadfully wrong." The last words he ever said.
I have been doing exposés on Satanism for decades, and we've been dealing with Satanism and satanic ritual abuse. And the position that I have taken, and the position that most people that were doing what I was doing have taken, is that basically Anton LaVey, who got his training in a circus, he was in the circus literally, and that he was just a showman. You know, it's not good to be a Satanist, but people kind of poo-pooed him as being a serious worker of ritual magic and connected to the hardcore, dangerous satanic groups. Well, I have totally revised my position. And I believe that the picture that was painted of LaVey kind of as a clown and just kind of a jokester, not to be taken seriously, I think it was on purpose, and purposely so that we would not pay attention to the groups that split off of the Church of Satan that Mr. LaVey started, and the groups that come from them. And we're going to be looking at some.
Guys, I can't help the glare with these guys. They always glare because they got a black background. So I can't change the glare.
Some of the groups that split. And we're going to be looking at it because this is the neo-Nazi underbelly, Nazi Satanism, if you will. Now, Mrs. Atkins made the photo up here because before she became one of the Manson girls, Anton LaVey had a little gig he did in San Francisco. He called it the Topless Witches, and he would perform a witch's Sabbath. And the main attraction in Anton LaVey's witch's Sabbath of his Topless Witches was a woman by the name of Susan King, who was Susan Atkins, the Manson girl. So there were direct connections with Anton LaVey and the Manson group. And I want to read here from a book called The Black Sun by Nicholas Goodrich Clark. And we'll see some of these other connections. It says here, in the late 1940s, LaVey was already corresponding with Jack Parsons, a Crowleyan lodge leader in Pasadena, and he frequented a branch of the Church of Thelema in Berkeley, California in 1951. Now, let's just think about it. In the 40s, it was 1967 when Anton LaVey declared the Age of Satan there in San Francisco. But in the 40s, he was connected with Jack Parsons. That was back before many people even knew who Jack Parsons was. And he was attending these occult lodge meetings all the way back to 1951. So we've got serious connections with LaVey, with Jack Parsons, with the OTO, these Thelemic lodges. Now, in 1961, LaVey and Anger, we're talking about Kenneth Anger. It says Parsons' close associate, who enjoyed cult status in Hollywood for underground films such as inauguration of the Pleasure Dome, 1954, based on Crowley and his own visit to the Abbey of Thelema at Salafu. So we're talking about people like Mr. Anger that were directly connected with Crowley, direct connections with the OTO, direct connections with the Rocket Man himself, Jack Parsons, which brings in Paperclip and the whole Nazi bailiwick. In 1961, in 1961, LaVey and Anger began hosting regular parties in San Francisco for friends interested in magic and the supernatural. This magic circle was the precursor of the Church of Satan. So what we have before Mr. LaVey rolled out the Church of Satan, and I think basically the whole...
And there's not really much they can do about that water shortage, is there? There's not much they can do about it.
The thing was misdirection to keep everybody focused. That's what magic is. It's misdirection. And they wanted everyone to think LaVey was a clown, that this wasn't even really a serious, hardcore, dark stuff. But I think with rethinking this thing, I think LaVey was a serious occult player. I think that this was all orchestrated so that we would not pay attention to these groups that broke off from the Church of Satan, which we're going to look at here just in a moment.
You mentioned their association with Hollywood, and of course we know Manson and all of their people's association with Hollywood, but it really makes you think and ponder when you start hearing about things like Diddy, for instance.
Yeah.
This ideal of contracting people, but through...
Yeah, isn't P. Diddy due to be trialed soon? Pretty sure.
Means, they get power through this, but through means of humiliation and ritual, probably. They called them freak-offs. That's what Diddy called them. But before Diddy, there was people that did it to Diddy, right? This is a common thing in Hollywood. And what people don't realize is this kind of stuff is kind of where it all kind of kicked off even harder. These people are associated with the power might of Hollywood and of the music industry and of every industry in general. Even people don't believe this, but they'll find out. But the mainstream pastors, these pastors that are famous and allowed to be promoted by everyone, there's a handler there too, and people don't know about that, but they'll find out soon enough.
Yeah. Now in this, and of course, Jane Mansfield, who met an untimely death. She was a member of LaVey's Church of Satan. So was Sammy Davis Jr. And connected there with Kenneth Anger, we have people like Mick Jagger, Jimmy Page of Led Zeppelin. We have direct contacts. People connected in there would be Dennis Hopper, the Mamas and the Papas, gaggles of people there in that rock music scene. So we have connections here that go in to the deepest part of the dark culture that was developing here in our land. Now, I'll give you just a little flavor of the Nazi flavor. This is something few people know about, but Mr. Clark writes about this on page 214 of his book. This just gives us an idea of the Nazi flavor of the Church of Satan. He writes here, an overall debt to Crowleyan magic is attributed to Anger's involvement, but LaVey was also drawn to the evil aura of the Third Reich. The Church of Satan's Law of the Trapezoid was prefaced by the Nazi anthem, Germany Awake. Awake to what? Well, maybe the Golden Age, huh? Written by Dietrich Eckart, alongside garbled references to the Vril Thule and the Anahambre.
Yeah.
LaVey claims that the Die Ecclestein Vorsiepel rituals were based on the distorted angles of German expressionist film and performed in Nazi Germany by the elite of the SS. So the connections with Mr. LaVey, with the neo-Nazi spirituality, and with the very most hardcore groups, they are there. They are there. The Manson family, OTO, you name it, he was hooked in. So that's why I am totally revising my opinion of Mr. LaVey. I think this picture of him that was portrayed as a comic, kind of a comic opera clown from the circus, I think that was on purpose. I think it was absolutely on purpose. Now, this is one of the groups that broke away from the Church of Satan, the Order of the Black Ram. It was founded in Detroit by Douglas Robbins. And with the Order of the Black Ram, this here is a picture here of altar and symbolism. It was full-blown neo-Nazi Satanism with no veils. There's no effort here to hold back some kind of veneer of cordiality. It was full-blown Nazi Satanism. And it was mild compared to this group we're going to be talking about. This next group here. Well, before we go there, we've got to talk about this guy before we talk about the other group. This fellow we know is Michael Aquino. Michael Aquino, who broke away from Anton LaVey. There's a photo on the internet of Anton LaVey and Michael Aquino and Sammy Davis Jr., who was a member of the Rat Pack with Frank Sinatra and all of them, Dean Martin. Well, yeah, Sammy Davis Jr. was a full-blown Satanist. And here on the other side, you see him there. That's either his wife or his daughter. But the Temple of Set began, and Mr. Aquino believed that he had received direct revelations from Satan. Of course he did. And he adopted all of this neo-Nazi symbolism. Now, he was so far into it.
Most serial killers fall in the 4 birth signs. Like there's 4 birth signs that serial killers, that's their sign. And it's sort of unusual.
Here in this next slide, we're going to look at the castle where Mr. Aquino went to work what he called his Woolisburg working. He actually went to this castle, and this castle is the actual castle where Himmler had the headquarters of the Nazi SS. And it was set up where Mr. Himmler did occult rituals and satanic rituals, might as well call it while it is, here in the Woolisburg Castle. Now, I'll read a little bit about this from a book called Painted Black by Carl Raschke. And on page 147, he said this. He says, in the autumn of 1981, Aquino wrote and circulated within the Temple of Set a document known as the Woolisburg Working. A working in the magical lexicon is a set of ritual acts that allegedly influence future events. It is like a time release capsule on the astral plane. Now, that's something to think about for a minute. A time release capsule on the astral plane. It says Aquino carried out this particular working at the North Tower of the Woolisburg Castle in Westphalia, Germany, where Nazi SS leader Heinrich Himmler had supposedly outfitted a chamber to conduct black magic in order to enhance the outcome of World War II. Well, that didn't work out too good for them, did it? But they're not giving up. That's the thing. And it says Aquino reviews how he tracked down the legends and found the place so as to rekindle for the world once again the flame of Hitlerian occultism. Now, most people don't know what Hitlerian occultism is, but this is exactly what Miss Debbie and Miguel Serrano put together post-World War II, where they actually worshiped Hitler in a black mass. They literally considered Hitler an avatar, and they connected and communicated with him on the astral plane. Now, I'm not saying this is real. I believe they were doing it, but they were talking to devils. Let's make this clear. And they were very much made the claims that Hitler wasn't dead for many, many years. And I, for one, do believe that that body they found in the bunker there in the Berlin, I do not believe that that was Adolf Hitler. I do believe that he survived and continued on for several years in South America. I just hope the old guy's dead now.
They actually DNA'd them skull. They DNA'd that skull they took to Russia. It was Hitler's skull. And it turns out it's a female skull anyway. It's not even a male skull.
But this is the Satanism, and basically all Satanism. You cannot consider it as anything but Nazi Satanism, because from the largest satanic organizations, the Church of Satan with LaVey, the Temple of Set, and you just pick one. They were all deep into this Hitler spirituality, esoteric Hitlerism, I guess is the term they use. And they all believed that the golden age of Thule would return. And this was the whole thing of the Woolersburg working with Aquino and the Temple of Set. And as many of you know, Michael Aquino worked in the Pentagon. He worked on these remote viewing esoteric programs the Pentagon has. He was one of the pioneers of it. He had elite security clearance in the Pentagon while he was doing this wackadoodle satanic rituals there in these Nazi castles. So that kind of shows you how things come down here in the good old USA. Now, this fella here puts them all to shame here. This is Mr. David Myatt, and he founded a group called the Order of Nine Angles. And Mr. Myatt was anti-Semitic, but he was much more anti-Christian than he was anti-Semitic. The deep hatred for Christians that the Order of Nine Angles has is truly frightening. They actually said that the perfect human sacrifice for them would to sacrifice a Jew or a Christian. The Christian was the best if they could do that. Now, it says here, and here again, this is from Mr. Goodrich Clark's book, The Black Sun, and he says, common to all Nazi Satanist groups is an utter contempt for the values of Christianity and liberal society. The highest praise is reserved for the warrior spirit, heroic courage and pride of pagan barbarian peoples, especially the Teutonic and Celtic natives of Northern and Western Europe prior to their conversion to Christianity. Nietzsche is regarded as a prophet for his celebration of the Antichrist and denunciation of Christianity as a religion of slaves. The chief representative of Nazi Satanism in Britain is William David Myatt. Now, I want to read something here from a book here. This is Magic and Theory and Practice by Aleister Crowley. And on page 95 of this book, Mr. Crowley wrote this: the animal should therefore be killed within the circle or the triangle, as the case may be. And I need to give here a little parental warning here. This is rough stuff, and moms and dads, you might not want the kids to hear this because this gets a little rough. But this is what Mr. Crowley wrote. We need to go here. It says the animal should therefore be killed within the circle or the triangle, as the case may be, so that its energy cannot escape. An animal should be selected whose nature accords with that of the ceremony. A male child of perfect innocence and high intelligence is the most satisfactory and suitable victim. And on the next page, he said, but the bloody sacrifice, though more dangerous, is more efficacious. For nearly all purposes, human sacrifice is the best. Now, what the folks at the Golden Dawn and OTO do, they say, now this is all symbolic. I'm not saying I believe them, but I'm saying that's what they say. That, oh, no, we don't really sacrifice humans, that this is just symbolic. And there again, I'm not saying I believe that, I'm saying that's what they say. Now, this is where the ONA absolutely ditches that theology, and they absolutely throw out the idea that there is anything symbolic in this, but they actually believe that the initiation ritual involves human sacrifice. I'll read here from Mr. Clark on page 218. It says the ONA, the Order of Nine Angles rituals, employed a satanic mass that invoked Adolf Hitler as a noble savior as a form of positive blasphemy. He asserts, now this is Mr. David Myatt, he asserts that Satanism requires the performance of acts that are generally regarded as forbidden, illegal, and evil if the initiate is to experience the amoral, causal realms of sinister forces. A prime example of this is the ONA teaching and practice of human sacrifice as a form of initiation. An initiation involving human sacrifice. Now, this, that's what they say, and they say, catch me if you can. This is, should make us all just really sit up and take notice that such things as this exist. Do they exist? Yes, they do exist. And these people are absolutely devoted to the spirituality of the bringing in of the new age. Now, John, of the new golden age. Now, when I read this, John, what come into...
I was never here. They both look very interesting, especially the top one. I loaded that so I can watch it later.
My mind immediately. He says that David Myatt and the ONA, you have to commit illegal, forbidden. The more illegal and forbidden it is, even up to human sacrifice, the more power you get. That reminded me of Sabotage City.
Definitely. It's amazing too, because this also keeps them in bondage. So if you do this kind of ritual, not only does it sear your conscience, but it also gives them blackmail over these people. So the more illegal it is, not only does it give more power to the cult, but supposedly gives more power to the person doing it. And I believe that. I know that based on all that I've read about the occult, there seems to be a common thread that this blood is able to summon entities. For some reason, they need this blood to do that. So it makes a lot of sense. And Sabotage Zeddy, that guy, interesting. For those people that didn't see that broadcast we did on that, I think that they should definitely go back to it. I can't remember what we titled.
Diane, I have showed links that have been posted on the chat, but that's too dangerous. I'll get a community strike for that.
David, but man, shocking stuff that most people have no idea about.
Yeah, and it is shocking.
What did we call that episode?
John, I can't remember.
1666, maybe?
It might be. We'll have to have some of our listeners help us out with that. But yeah, it was a Hootie Bob.
I think I did one with Dan Bedondi on your channel as well.
And we re-aired it on FOJC. You did it with Dan on his network.
That was a really good one, actually.
Oh yeah, it actually was.
Not that it shouldn't be, but it was a good one.
Absolutely. Now let's look at another fella here. He's another guy from England, Terry Raymond Bolton. And this is another group. And how many of these people are there? Well, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them. All of these groups have set up chapters in multiple countries. They're international groups. They're affiliated and coordinated. And this here is the far extreme version of the people adopting this neo-Nazi spirituality of the bringing into the golden age through the purification of the bloodline. But this goes all the way through the spectrum. There are scientists that believe this. There are people in politics that believe this. Now, they're not going to be saying they do, but I guarantee you this is a deeply permeated thought that it goes deep. And like Mr. Mars said, they have become the richest and the largest secret society and cult of all time. Now, let's talk a little bit about Mr. Kerry Bolton. And I'll read here a little bit again from Nicholas Goodrich Clark book, The Black Sun. And he said in January 1994, Bolton set up the Black Order, which claimed a global network of national lodges in Britain, France, Italy, Finland, Sweden,
Hey, Josh,
Germany,
welcome to the
the
channel.
United States, and Australia, dedicated to the fostering of national social.
What's the topic? Underground chambers, the Hyperborean tunnels?
Socialism. Now, something else we want to pick up here that is one of the cardinal beliefs here of this group. They believe in, the Nazi movement was national socialism. They hated globalism.
Yeah.
They believed in the power and the sanctity of the individual nation, national socialism, and they hated the communists and that New World Order theology that basically sprung from Illuminism and jumped into what became the communist movement there in the late 1800s and up into the Bolshevik Revolution. Now, let me read a couple more things here from.
I saw a photo of Hitler as an old man. This is before AI and all that. And I'm not sure if it was Hitler, like he was about 80 years old, but it certainly did look like Hitler.
Nicholas Roach Clark's book. And he says here on page 229 about Mr. Bolton and his Black Order. He says, the Puritan Jewish plutocracy hankers after the messianic vision of a new world order in which their elites will preside over the docile, obedient masses of humanity. These elites, and these are Mr. Bolton's words, these elites seek to undermine all national, cultural, and ethnic differences in order to reduce humanity to a mass of interchangeable economic units, produce and consume automations in a world state. Bolton applauds Russian nationalist Vladimir Zhirkonov's goal of a new European order free from Zionism and Americanization. The Nazi Satanist must deploy a sinister dialectic of crisis creation to disrupt all messianic trends toward one worldism. These people hate the New World Order as is espoused by the folks at Davos, and what has become here in America the Democratic Party that has been taken over by these leftist elites, they're just basic communists in a new garb. And these people we're talking about that are embracing this golden age theology, they hate these New World Order leftists. And this goes all the way back to this book. This is a part and parcel of what they believe. And I'll read again from The Golden Thread, Esoteric Hitlerism by Miguel Serrano. And I'll read here from page 36. It says here, the civilizations inside the earth are superior to the inhabitants on the surface of the earth.
Wow.
The civilizations inside the earth consider the inhabitants on the surface barbarians, beasts, and they know what our destiny is, the New World Order. The plan of the New World Order is total destruction and domination over the planet so that they can finally install their Messiah, the false king of the world, but they are scared of the last battalion. These people hate that New World Order agenda, and they're ready to do anything they have to do to stop it. So here we see this golden age in opposition to the Davos Democratic Party version of the New World Order. So we have these two things coming into conflict.
Amazing stuff, David. That's where, I mean, to me, when I look at, this is going to give me a lot to really look at, but I understand the Hyperborean thing. I've researched that pretty extensively, and I know that there are many civilizations that speak of this. In fact, almost every civilization has a story of someone similar to a Hyperborean. Some call them Atlanteans, some call them the feathered serpents, etc. But they have the same exact story. And even with the Tuatha De Danann, I don't know if I said it right or not. I'm sorry for all of you native speakers. I get so many messages from people about my pronunciations, and I'm very sorry. A lot of these words I've never heard, I've only read. So there you go. But when you hear about this is a common story amongst all of these, and it makes you wonder why or what they're contacting, how long they've been contacting them. And I think that, when you get the demon narrative, the idea of these Nephilim spirits being in the earth, which is exactly kind of what the book of Enoch says. There's these caverns in the earth where souls are in the Abraham's bosom. The Bible talks about this Abraham's bosom. Have they found a way to contact these entities in there, or are they contacting something greater than that? Are they contacting angels that are bound within the earth, such as the ones you talked about earlier in Euphrates? In your opinion on going through all of this and how important Iceland is to them, what is your opinion on that?
On what specifically, John?
Like, what do you think they're contacting demons, or do you think they're contacting actual species of something down there?
Both.
Okay.
Both. And we did another midnight. I have no idea what the name was, but we're talking about Madame Blavatsky and how, and of course, Blavatsky's all over this root race thing in Hyperborea, but she claimed to actually have made contact with flesh and blood entities that had lived for hundreds of years.
And it reminds me of the tall white scenario. You did a broadcast on that 2 weeks ago.
Exactly.
So you have these tall whites, you have flesh and blood entities. It reminds me also of Admiral Byrd's diary, in which he was taken to the heart of the earth after exploring the Arctic Circle. Was taken to the heart of Earth by entities that can only be described as Hyperborean, or the tall whites, I guess you could say it.
Yes, sir.
So there's a lot to this, and so many different threads that you go down. I guess, and I'm going to ask these questions because I don't really understand all of it. I tend to look at it as an octopus with 8 arms, and each arm has like a puppet on the end of it, and they're fighting each other. And we're all kind of watching the show, but there's still that one head at the top. But I do see the division in 2 different types of government or laws that govern societies. Like you said, it's either socialism of sorts, or like a communism, or it is a fascism of sorts. Usually, we've had a democracy here in the United States, but ultimately we're kind of nationalists in the way that we are. And when you look at the division of Zionism versus communism, there's a clear division there between the ones who they have some sort of religion versus the communistic side that have no religion. So my question to you is, how are the Zionists related to the esoteric Hitlerism, or maybe not just that, but maybe the New Age agenda in general? Because it seems like they should be against each other, because I believe the idea of it's like a white supremacy for Aryan, for this type of theology, versus Zionism. There's more of a Jewish supremacy thing. So how are they connected, and are they working together, or are they separate? This maybe not be a question you want to answer or know how to answer, but it's just something that's in my mind, and I wonder.
Well, in Judaism, there are Jewish people that are Zionist, and people in Judaism that are Zionist, and there are many that are not Zionist. Now, we've also talked about when the Allies went into Germany and finally went into Berlin, they found there in a synagogue over 200 Jews that were protected there by Adolf Hitler, and they were allowed to worship all through the war there in Germany, and they were Zionist Jews. Now, what some people believe is that the things that Adolf Hitler did in the persecution of the Jews made the way for the argument that the Jews needed their own national homeland. And the Zionists who believed in that in Germany, they were protected, and the ones that weren't, they were horrifically persecuted. And Zionism, we've talked a lot about the letter of Albert Pike to Giuseppe Mazzini, and he talked about 3 world wars, and the First World War and the Second World War come off just as scheduled. And the Third World War, he said, would be fought between the Zionist and the radical Islam in the Middle East. And the stage looks like it's being set there. But common sense would tell you, if this is true, and the first 2 wars came about as scheduled, and I have every reason to believe that this Third World War, they'll accomplish it also, that a president of the United States that is a Zionist would be much more fitted to carry out this war and initiate it than would a president that would be from the left or a non-Zionist. So I don't know. I can't judge people's hearts, and I can't make individual determinations. But what I can do is to track this theology and its movement and the things that we see happening. I think they're.
I was never here. I'm not game enough to play that. That'll get you. That'll get them looking at you to give you a community standard strike. They do not like you talking about that sort of stuff at all. Same as a jab. I don't talk about that much either.
Obvious in front of her face that a lot of this has to do with this occult spirituality that we're talking about tonight. Now, and by the way, too, Mr. Trump's renaming a lot of stuff, and it was in 2023 that this Thule Air Base was changed to the Pittifuck. Let's just see if we're renaming stuff that the Thule Air Base gets renamed. Let's just watch for that.
Well, I think they renamed it recently to the Space Force. There's like a Space Force headquarters.
Yeah, it's a part of the Space Force now.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
It's like a strategic location. So it's really amazing, like when you think about it in all of those lights, that they're purposely making moves towards that area. They're purposely making moves towards Gaza. There's all of these purposeful moves towards taking over very specific areas. And a lot of these areas link towards some sort of Nephilim, as we talked about last week, where they have, obviously, Gaza has been known for Nephilim ever since back in the time of David. And, and so there's a connection between these 2 areas for some reason. And I'm not, I think that the Iceland connection, Miguel Serrano, who wrote this, obviously he had a lot of power and influence. And so I would love, I think about this stuff, man. I would love to be a fly on the wall at that place for just just to be able to see what is actually going down there. If this is all a big myth, all part of a big deception, or if there's literally something that they're tapping into there. I just would love to know that.
Yeah. And we'll just have to watch and pray and see. And I'll have
This is a month old
to say that I cannot judge anyone's heart. And I can't definitively know if Mr. Trump is aware of this or not. I can't say, and I won't say, and I'll leave it to all of our listeners to make their determination. But what I do want to make real clear to everybody is that John and I in no way promote this golden age Nazi theology. These practices that are of the occult, we in no way encourage them. We condemn them.
Yeah.
And we also condemn this ideology. And we also condemn this left-wing theology and the New World Order from the progressive left Democratic Party and the boys at Davos. What we advocate here is the Israel of God, Jesus Christ and him crucified. We're looking for that city not made with hands. We are citizens of that heavenly kingdom. And we encourage each and every one to get involved with the Israel of God. If you do not know Jesus Christ, we're looking at some of the most horrific and at the same time exciting days we've ever experienced on this earth. And it's a time when you need to know Jesus. You need to know Jesus. You need to know him now. Without Jesus in your heart, and the Holy Spirit to lead you, you're not going to be able to walk through this perilous time minefield of the last days. So if you don't know Jesus, you repent right now. God be merciful to me, a sinner. Repent and believe the gospel that Christ died for your sins on the cross.
That's pretty stunning, Diane, about Trump.
Amen. And now it's time, folks. If you enjoyed this show at all, please join us on what we call
I thought I'd take a look into this.
After an extra week, it wasn't hard for Cora to convince Gemma her favorite food wasn't pasta. You were made to eat outside the box. We were made to help our members save.
So what helps you more, waiting 15 months to pay just 70 cents less tax a day, or immediately save $14 per tank by
The Great Pyramid? I've talked about it already on a previous video, but what is so... The Great Pyramid, I've talked about it already on a previous video, but what is so interesting about this is now we understand...
Diane, I wonder where that can portal to. Like, can it get to the moon?
What it actually is. What is the Great Pyramid? What was underneath it? The entire process of what it's doing. I'm going to explain it all in this video. This is absolutely astonishing because this was something that was sort of theorized before, but now we have actually all the evidence of what was really going on. This is actually some very high-tech stuff, my friends. And this was actually very similar to what Nikola Tesla did. Yes, indeed. So you have here the Great Pyramid, and you have these massive columns underneath the Great Pyramid that go down nearly a kilometer. This was discovered via synthetic aperture radar Doppler tomography. It reveals details of undiscovered high-resolution internal structure of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Now, of course, a lot of people have been talking about this over the last couple of days, but a lot of them haven't really explained what this means. So that's what we're going to do in this video here. Now, my background is mechanical engineering. That doesn't mean I'm qualified to understand this fully, but it means I have a little bit, at least a little bit of background with regards to this. Now, this video originally was shown on the channel Project.
I don't understand what you mean. Illuminary. I don't understand.
Unity. And actually, I think originally it was on X first. Here we have the guy who created the initial finding video. The Giza Pyramid's origin takes an unsuspecting turn. Advanced scans in 2025 have uncovered an astonishing underground complex beneath the pyramid. Researchers found 5 multi-level structures linked by pathways, 8 deep cylindrical wells plunging 648 meters, 2 massive cubic chambers that these cylindrical wells sit on top of, spanning 2 kilometers underneath the Giza Plateau. So if you even imagine this, what we're talking about here is you have these massive columns right here, right? Sitting on top of blocks. And all of this goes down 2 kilometers, more than a mile down. Clearly, and this is in sand, okay? So there's no people with rudimentary tools making this pyramid or anything underneath it. This should have been thrown out so long ago. It's ridiculous. But of course, that was perpetuated forever and ever. Oh, they just had bronze tools. Oh, yeah, okay, dude. They didn't make this with bronze tools. Okay, they can't even cut granite with that. It's so ridiculous, some of the theories that have come out over the years, trying to explain this away with like 10,000 people working on it and pulley systems and all this weird stuff. Clearly, that's not what's going on here. Some sort of advanced technology was used to create this pyramid, period. Okay, now we know what it is. It's an energy generator. It's a massive energy generator. I'm going to show you that in this video. We have all the science backing it up. We have the channel called the Y Files. We've had a number of people theorize what the Great Pyramid could be. We do have one person I think actually did sort of the best theory on what it is. And it comes from this channel here called the Y Files. This guy really did a good job analyzing what was going on with the Great Pyramid. We're going to go play some of his clips with regards to that. But I'm going to go through and explain what's really going on here with this entire Great Pyramid, because it was indeed an energy generator and very similar to the technology that Nikola Tesla had created, but on a much larger scale, and worked with the harmonic frequency of the Earth. It's just absolutely astounding. I'm going to show you all of it in this video. But first, though, before we get into all that, got to mention Food Supply, 25-year shelf life. Link is in the description. Go check it out. Link is in the description if you have not already bought some before. 4 weeks worth for $247. You've seen all the strange things happening over the last few years. It's always wise to be prepared. Link is in the description for that. Also, this book here, The Lost Ways, how your great-great-grandfather lived without electricity, how to build a cellar, do things around the house like they did in the good old days, hundreds of pages illustrated. You're going to definitely need that before the electricity goes out. You're not going to be able to buy it at Walmart. At any rate, link is in the description, $37 plus shipping. Let's get back to the video. So we have, of course, a number of things to go through with regards to this. First, of course, is the recent discovery. As I already showed you, there's also these massive slabs underneath this that makes the thing go down an entire 2 kilometers, which is more than a mile. Obviously, you're not digging that with little shovels, okay? It's not 10,000 people digging down a mile with shovels, okay? It's not happening. So we know that some sort of technology was used to create this. There's no way to explain this.
Guys, he glares as well. Him and Mary CTV, they both glare. I can't help it.
Way anymore, all right? Just accept reality. This thing was not built by human hands with no technology. Clearly, there was some sort of advanced technology used here, whether it was human-based or whatever it was. That's the facts. End of story. Anyway, I just wanted to get that out of the way because there's so many people that tried to explain away all this stuff over the years. I just remember watching documentaries about it that were trying to explain this way from the 90s and on, 80s, 90s, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, so of course, this technology, the synthetic aperture radar Doppler tomography, is what was used to essentially map out what was inside the Great Pyramid. I think I have a picture. Oh, I did have a picture of it. Yeah, actually, here we are. I think it's in this. Yeah, here we go. So you can see they had sort of mapped out what was inside of it. You can see here these.
See how there's no glare of this sort of stuff? But when it's on Tony, his background makes him glare. That's why I can't fix it.
Columns, 8 columns sit on top of these massive blocks. I mean, goodness gracious, this thing is the size of the Great Pyramid. There's no way. I don't need it. I'm sure you already get the point. I mean, it's clearly something advanced that was put here. As you can see with these radar Doppler, they're able to look inside and see all of this underneath the Great Pyramid. And it's just kind of amazing, right? So that was something that just recently came out like a couple days ago. And what's really interesting about it is what this all entails and means, because we've had people develop theories assuming that there were these massive water columns, because those things held water underneath the Great Pyramid. And this video here goes through and explains this. Check this clip out right here.
There are 2 interior shafts that lead to the Queen's Chamber. The northern shaft has traces of hydrochloric acid. The southern has traces of hydrated zinc chloride. Combining these 2 chemicals creates a volatile reaction that generates hydrogen, a lot of hydrogen. This hydrogen gas would flow from the Queen's Chamber through the horizontal passage and into the Grand Gallery. The Grand Gallery is also made of granite. As the hydrogen gas builds up, the pressure compresses the granite, creating electricity.
So what's going on here is when you have granite, the way it conducts, it actually allows electricity to go upward. So that's what's going on with the Great Pyramid as well. So what he was talking about here is that while it compresses, it actually causes it to sort of have a chain reaction and just continue to cause and create more electricity as this hydrogen gas builds up pressure and compresses the granite. And so it also had this sort of frequency of sound that it also created. And so what he does is he shows in this video how that actually there are these cavities inside the Great Pyramid. I showed it a minute ago. Let me show you this. Where is it at? Here we go. These cavities here are actually set up to make a certain sound, okay? And they actually, the way they stack these rocks on it, it actually causes them to have a different sound. It's kind of very similar.
It only goes for about 10 seconds. I'll play it later if you want after this.
To kind of like a glass bottle when you drink soda. And I have a bottle here, but it's not.
Yeah, I'll do it now. It only goes for 10 seconds.
Actually, it's a link along that tether line you see there, 25 feet of umbilical cord. That contains a life support system and communications link from the spacecraft life support system out through that chest pack.
Okay. Let's get back to this. Stop coming and going, up or down.
Labour and the coalition want net zero, want to close down coal, destroy our community.
Come on, the city is doing this.
Here we go. These cavities here are actually set up to make a certain sound, okay? And they actually, the way they stack these rocks on it, it actually causes them to have a different sound. It's kind of very similar to kind of like a glass bottle when you drink soda. And I have a bottle here, but it's not one of those, and it's a lot harder to do it with. I'll try to do it with this. Barely can do it. I mean, it's really hard with this one, but it's a lot easier with a glass bottle. I think you know what I'm talking about, but I don't actually drink soda, so I can't go get one for you to show you. But I'm sure you've seen that before or done that, but it's a very similar concept to what's going on with these. The gas goes into these chambers, and actually because of the way that the rock is stacked, it actually changes the pitch of the sound going through it and causes it to have the same frequency as the granite itself. So this is something that I learned when I was an engineer. So for example, when you have an engine in a car, right? You make sure that the body of the car doesn't have the same frequency, natural frequency. The materials of the car do not have the same natural frequency as the engine's frequency of vibration. Because if it does, what happens is it starts shaking and gets worse and worse and worse, and then your car falls apart. It's kind of like similar to a jet going the speed of sound and then just going exactly the speed of sound. And then the sound starts resonating really big, and then the whole jet falls apart. So it's the same thing with what's going on here, is that these chambers are actually set up to have the same frequency as granite itself, so that it actually causes this whole thing to vibrate the entire pyramid, which then causes it to shake up all this electricity. I guess you would say it's a kind of a bad way of saying it, but up to the top. And what's required, and let me just play some clips because I'm not doing as good of a job as this guy explaining it, but I think you understand what I'm saying. So let me show you what I'm referring to. I think he says a little bit. Yeah, let's just explain it here. So here's an example of his picture, the resonance chamber. Underneath it, and you're able to change the sound based on the rocks inside at the top, right? So that's that. But let's just play a clip from him where he talks about some of this stuff.
That the Great Pyramid was a structure for creating, harnessing, and focusing energy. The exterior was made of material that insulates electricity. The interior was made of material that conducts electricity. The chambers were made of material that creates electricity. The next piece of evidence is the pyramid's ability to focus EM energy. In 2018, scientists used radio waves at different frequencies to see if the Great Pyramid would interact with electromagnetic waves of a resonant length. Their experiments proved that in a resonant state, the pyramid can concentrate electromagnetic energy in the internal chambers as well as under its base.
So, of course, it can actually conduct this electricity, and this is what he was showing. The study reveals the Great Pyramid of Giza can focus electromagnetic energy. All right, so that's pretty interesting. And, of course, if the capstone on top of it is gold, that's perfect for this. I think he showed it right here. Where did he show it?
The chambers were made of material that creates electricity. The next piece of evidence is the pyramid's ability to focus EM energy. In 28.
Yeah, I don't know if it shows it. I thought it showed it somewhere. I can't show it. At the top, capstone is made out of gold, which is exactly what you would want. So the entire outside is encasing all this energy. So they had these sort of outer capstones on the outside of the pyramid that actually kept the electricity inside the pyramid, and then the capstone would have been out of gold to essentially send the electricity upwards. And there's also, he had this other study here as well. This one's pretty interesting. So it shows that granite will send voltage upwards. As you can see in this abstract, this paper discusses a method of combining a man-made system with a unique natural phenomenon to generate power on a very large scale by harnessing a natural reaction common to the Earth. This energy system taps into a very unique electrical phenomenon for clean energy. Okay, so this essentially what's going on here is the rocks survive vibrated electrons will migrate through the rock and up to the surface by combining science and music. So the music was actually inside the pyramid playing via this gas going through that I showed you earlier with that first clip. So it actually made a sort of a musical sound, and this sound is at 440, and that's actually the exact range of frequency you need for this to essentially deal with the natural frequency of the Earth. So it actually sends the electricity upwards. And so this actually relates to what Nikola Tesla had created with his tower here. Check this out.
It's built on top of an aquifer with copper and iron rods extending down into the water. When electricity was sent into the tower.
So it's on top of a water aquifer, and you saw those rods that went down into it, right? The iron rods, copper and iron. Well, apparently they discovered also copper and iron in the water cylinders underneath the Great Pyramid. So this is clearly a energy producing system. Over 5,000-year-old copper pipe from the pyramid of in Cheops in Egypt could still be used today. Copper pipe and tubing. It's one of the most corrosion-resistant materials we have in the plumbing industry. Coppersmiths, ancient Egyptians, were early developers of pipe and the techniques of making copper alloys. In the beginning, of course, their pipe fittings were very crude, like the Mesopotamians. They used clay pipe.
And King Charles just met the Pope in the last 2 days. So things are ramping up.
From a combination of strong clay. So again, coming back to them assuming, and this kind of has the storyline or narrative in this writing right here of, well, they just built it. They built the whole thing, of course, with very primitive tools. 2 miles down, or no, not 2 miles, 2 kilometers down. Yeah, okay, dude, that didn't happen. I actually had an interview at Caterpillar. That was one of my first job offers was Caterpillar. So I had a job offer there, and they have these massive dump trucks, massive severe service, equipment to move dirt and things like that. They were building this massive dam in China. But you know what? I don't think they could actually remove a mile of dirt, okay, like that, unless they had a massive program, like even bigger than the one they did with the dam in China.
Okay, I disagree with him. Sydney's getting a second airport built, and where it was getting built, they leveled the land. It was really hilly. So, yeah, there's like kilometres of land that was leveled. So we had the ability to do that. He just said we haven't, but we have.
Really don't think they could do it. So who did this, right? We have all this technology today, and we probably couldn't even do what's going on with this pyramid. They have tolerances that are double what our standard ones are for today between the rocks themselves, the tolerances between the surfaces. And then you got...
He met the Pope. He had a meeting with the Pope.
2 kilometers down digging with these massive bases and these cylindrical columns of water with copper and iron in them that go up into this device that has has it tuned perfectly for the harmonic frequency of granite so that it can bring all the electricity up into the top of this great pyramid through the top, very similar to Nikola Tesla's tower. What was it called? I can't remember the name of it. Whatever Cliff Tower, like something Cliff Tower, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
So that's pretty amazing.
Yep, I think he's the last Pope too. Them 112 Popes prophecy. When he got the flu a couple of weeks ago, I knew he was going nowhere. I completely am convinced that the Pope is a false prophet. And I think Charles is the Antichrist. So hook up this week. Interesting.
Amazing.
Oh,
and so this would have actually given electricity to unlimited amount of electricity, by the way, to people in that area, right? So it would have given unlimited electricity, free energy, clean, to people in this area. Now, obviously, it wasn't primitive man building this thing. Give me a break. So the question is, who built it? That's the question. Now, of course, there's going to be a lot of people like posit answers. There's going to be people that say it was aliens, it was Anunnaki. And, there's going to be a lot of people saying a lot of different stuff. We don't know for sure. Could it have been humans with high tech? Probably not. Probably not. I mean, it could be. Theoretically, I guess it could be people that had super high technology back then and we just didn't know about it. I don't know. I'm going to say probably not. It could have been the Anunnaki. I mean, the whole thing with that, I feel like there's a lot of things to that that are not really accurate. Could it have been angels or fallen angels or something? Maybe. I don't know, man. This is a pretty interesting topic. I kind of feel like that it might have been something like, I don't know, man. Honestly, I feel, it's kind of hard to say, but those are some theories out there, right? I'm sure you've heard some of these. But I'll let you guys sort of argue it out in the comment section because I'm not quite sure. At any rate, so I thought it was pretty amazing realizing that's how the Great Pyramid worked. It wasn't a burial chamber. Yeah. Okay, this was something that created electricity for people to use.
I never thought it was a chamber of death. I never thought it was a chamber. Or a tomb. What do you call it? A tomb.
And this is also what Nikola Tesla, he had very similar technology that he had created himself with his tower, which of course, mysteriously, no one uses this type of electricity, probably because it doesn't make any money. That's the entire point. So I remember he went to JP Morgan, Tesla went to JP Morgan, showing him his ideas, and apparently JP Morgan rejected it because there was no money in it. So it seems like money is what makes the world go round these days. And if it doesn't make them money, they don't want it. You know what I mean? At any rate, so that's kind of what I noticed with this whole entire topic. It is an amazing discovery, though. Really amazing. And it makes it very obvious that clearly this was not primitive man building this. Very obviously. I don't even know if advanced man could build this. Digging down 2 kilometers. You got the super... What is it? The Super Kola borehole or whatever it's called in Russia. What was that? Yeah, here it is. Kola Super Deep Borehole. I can't even remember the name. So you have this thing. This was done back in 1979. It drilled down 7.6 miles Now, again, this is just a small hole, probably this big, that drilled down. Maybe it's a little bit, maybe it's like this. I don't know how big it was, but it wasn't something huge, right? They drilled down probably 7.7 miles. I'm sure it was probably bigger, probably like this or something, but it obviously wasn't the size of the Great Pyramid, is my point. 1 mile deep, the size of the Great Pyramid, that's insane. So clearly, we don't have the technology to probably do that very easily, especially in sand. I mean, I'm curious if there is a way we could do it today. Maybe there is. I don't know. I'm sure someone could figure it out, think of something, but obviously it would have taken a lot of high technology to do it. And
Good night, Phil.
this
God
is the
bless,
deepest we've
mate.
ever drilled, apparently, is 7.6